I'm Lieutenant Andrew Pink, deployed in HMCS Vancouver in the Indo-Pacific from Kingston, Ontario. When I think of Remembrance Day, I think of my family back home without me and the sacrifices they make while I'm deployed at sea.
Hi, I'm Espen Kopala from London, Ontario. I'm a cook on HMCS Vancouver, deployed in the Indo-Pacific. For me, Remembrance Day is a time to honor and reflect on the sacrifices made by fellow service members in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Leanne Murdoch-Feingold, currently on board His Majesty's Canadian Warship HMCS Ottawa. Every Remembrance Day, I like to think of all my family members who have served and who are currently serving, and all the sacrifices all the men and women of Canada have contributed throughout history.
I am Petty Officer 2nd Class Felix Sanfasson. I am a Naval Electronics Sensor Operator. My position on board is the Electromagnetic Warfare Supervisor. I am currently deployed on HMCS Ottawa on Operation Horizon in the Indo-Pacific. What I like to do for Remembrance Day is remember the sacrifice that men and women have done so that we can enjoy peace and safety in Canada.
A big thank you to all the men and women serving this country right now, and welcome back to our special Remembrance Day coverage here on CHEK. You're looking at the guns at Shoal Point. Of course, that's going to be a part of today's ceremony. We will be bringing you uninterrupted coverage as it begins from the cenotaph in Victoria. The crowd's starting to arrive. We're just a few minutes away. Welcome back. My name is Paul Haysom. I'm joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Johnson and retired Lieutenant Colonel Adele Donaldson. As mentioned, just moments away from that ceremony beginning. Adele, I want to ask you, what are you going to be watching for during today's ceremony?
First and foremost, any of the veterans from World War II and Korea. Right. And as you mentioned before, there are so few of them that are left. I'll also be looking for the servicemen and women who have served in Afghanistan in our peacekeeping missions, the ones that you will see with the blue berets. I'll also be looking at the sentries that have the silent vigil around the cenotaph. And finally, but I think very importantly, the families, the young children that show up, that have taken the time out of their day to physically be present to show their respect.
That's so beautifully said, Adele. And yeah, it's been 10 years since Canada ended the mission in Afghanistan, so a lot of those veterans will be here and will be at today's service. Lawrence, I'm interested in what you're going to be watching for. Adele mentioned the hat, and I want to make sure we got it Glengarry, right?
That's right,
correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So what are you going to be watching for?
Well, the thing I always watch for and find the most enjoyable, poignant moment in the Remembrance Day services is when they recite, they shall not grow old as we that are left grow old, age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn, and at the going down in the sun we shall remember them. And then the audience echoes that by saying we shall remember them. We are very familiar in Canada, of course, with McCrae's and Flanders Fields, but this was a poem by Robert Lawrence Binyon, an Englishman, who at the start of the First World War, he didn't serve at all, but as the war broke out, he put that poem together, and those stanzas come from that poem.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And you mentioned John McCrae's poem. We will end today's broadcast as we typically do with Flanders Fields, and we have a couple of students from George J. Elementary helping us read that one today. So we'll certainly have that poem as well. Adele, I'm interested who you're going to be thinking about on this day, because I mentioned all your service with so many different areas. Who do you think of on this day?
I think, of course, of the people that I've served with, but I think of the more than 110,000 Canadians that have lost their lives over the course of our history in service of providing that level of peace that we enjoy today. I think, too, of those who came home from the various conflicts, including the peacekeeping missions that we had and have been on for many, many years, as you know, that were wounded, either physically or psychologically. I think of those who currently serve, and particularly those that are deployed and away from their families. And I think of the future, the people that will come into the military in the future. And finally, I think of the families and the countless others who have been affected by the service of their loved ones.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned peacekeeping. I think that's such a key part. It's been 60 years since Canada's peacekeeping mission in Cyprus. They helped quell that. And Of course, 80 years since Juno Beach and D-Day. Lawrence, just before we get to that ceremony, who are you going to be thinking of on this day?
Well, as I said, my father served in the First World War in the Imperial Army and regaled me with war stories, I guess you could say. But further to that, I joined a Canadian Army that basically was the senior NCOs and the officers were Second World War and Korean War vets. And I enjoyed learning from them. They were all mentors and role models for me and anyone in the Army in the 60s and even in the 70s. Unfortunately, I regret that the younger service people haven't had the benefit of really knowing those people well and serving with them, but that's who I think about.
I mean, you talk about passing on the torch from family to family, but really it is just a large family, isn't it? In the military, in the Navy, in all of these, for the airmen, they become your family, don't they?
They do, and you know, when you know it's a veteran or has service, there's an immediate intimacy, a companionship with that, which is wonderful. I must admit I enjoyed all my years serving in the Army. And always have fond memories of it.
Well, again, we thank you both so much
You're
for your service. Thank you for being here today. That service, as you saw, is just about to get underway at the Cenotaph in Victoria. We are going to take you there now. Chris Dorrington is the Master of Ceremonies again this year. He's going to be the next voice that you hear.
Today, let us remember those who have died in the service of their country, those who we knew, those whose memory we treasure, and all who have lived and died in the service of humankind. I would ask everyone who is able to please stand for our national anthem, led today by Petty Officer 2nd Class Cindy Hawchuk, vocalist for the Naden Band.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all
In memory of the fallen, the Act of Remembrance will be read today by Cadet Sergeant Palaji Diata of the 2136 Canadian Scottish Regiment Army Cadet Corps.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. You are now welcome to join in the singing of O God, Our Help in Ages Past. The words can be found in your leaflet. This hymn will be followed by a prayer of benediction, led by Legion Padre, the Reverend Canon Andrew E. Gates, and then the Victoria Orion Male Choir that has led our singing here at the Cenotaph since 1929 will then sing In Flanders Fields.
Would you pray with me? I feel a sense of peace today, but it's a peace of an old man. A peace much like known that by a songbird flying over a burnt-out forest, looking for a branch on which to light. The peace of a young child sitting in the dust and the rubble of a school, a supposed safe place, destroyed by a targeted bomb. The peace of a farmer whose crops have been eaten by worms. The peace of a defeated politician who had worked so hard doing what he or she thought was right. Victors, those intoxicated by the glorious of success, they know no peace. Mine is the peace of those who are defeated, for they have nothing left but peace. We were made for greater things, and we were. Our peace is shrouded in our innocence. But we're not so innocent today. We're not so naive. And yet, I am at peace today. A peace in a place where if I want, I can cry for those who gave their all in our past and in our present violent times. Are we living the life they gave their lives? My peace refuses the alluring intoxication of success. It is a peace that refuses to let the hope die. A peace lived like some kind of a beacon, a candle burning on a barren shore. May we, in our naivety, share that peace today. For if this is not a place where tears are understood, then where can I go to cry? And my blessing, the same as last year, and will be for a while yet to come. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, superficial relationships, so that you will live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you will work for justice, equality, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, from rejection, starvation, and war, so that you will reach out your hand to comfort them and change their pain for joy. And may God bless you with the foolishness to think that you can make a difference in the world, so that you will do the things which others tell you cannot be done. Amen.
Crosses.
In order to accommodate the large number of wreaths being laid today, wreath layers will be called up in 9 different groups. The members of each group will please follow each other to the cenotaph. Movement around the cenotaph will flow from right to left. You will lay your wreaths collectively at the same time while surrounding the cenotaph. This will be done on my mark when you are all in position. Please lay your wreaths as close together as possible. You will then turn to your right and continue to circle the cenotaph past this podium and return to your seats. There are some exceptions to this. When called, the representative for the Lieutenant Governor and the Silver Cross Mother will please each proceed individually, and once having laid their wreaths, turn to the left and return directly to your seats. When the Armed Forces units are called, we would request that the fleet commander be centered on the cenotaph, with the additional units flanking him on either side where space permits. Once gathered as a group, please place your wreaths at the same time on my mark. You will then also turn to your right, circle the cenotaph, and return to your seats. The military will place their wreaths at the front. The laying of wreaths will now commence. For the Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia, Lieutenant Derek Frank, Honorary Aide-de-Camp to the Honorable Janet Austin. The Silver Cross Mother and family. Mrs. Sheila Fines, accompanied by her husband Sean and son Michael. The Memorial Cross, more often referred to as the Silver Cross, was first authorized on December 1, 1919, as a memento of personal loss and sacrifice on the part of widows and mothers of Canadian sailors, aviators, and soldiers who died for their country during the First World War. Sheila and her family represent the mothers and families of British Columbians Armed Forces members today, and are here more specifically in memory of Corporal Stuart Langridge. Government representatives. For the Government of Canada, Laurel Collins, Member of Parliament for Victoria. For the Government of British Columbia and Premier David Eby, the Honourable Grace Lohr. MLA for Victoria Swan Lake, Nina Krieger. For the City of Victoria, Mayor Marianne Alto. For the City of Port Angeles, Deputy Mayor Navarra Carr. The Honorary Consul of France to Victoria, Geoffroy de Nantoy. For the British Consulate General, Lieutenant Commander Jamie Vaughan. For Veterans Affairs Canada, Area Director Bev Martin. You may now place your wreaths. Representatives of the Canadian Armed Forces. For the Commander, Maritime Forces Pacific, Commodore David E. Mazur, Commander, Canadian Fleet Pacific, accompanied by Chief Petty Officer First Class David Bissell, Fleet Chief. For the 4th Canadian Rangers Patrol Group, Lieutenant Colonel Vincent Courtier, Commanding Officer, Honorary Colonel Major General Ed Fitch, and Quartermaster Sergeant Instructor Master Warrant Officer G. Cutting. For the Canadian Scottish Regiment, Princess Mary's, Lieutenant Colonel Slade Lurch, Commanding Officer, and Chief Warrant Officer Brad Farrell, Regimental Sergeant Major. For the 5th BC Field Artillery Regiment, Captain Anwar Mujtaba, Training Officer, and Warrant Officer Henry Slack, Battery Sergeant Major. For the Naval Association of Canada, Vancouver Island Branch, Commander Rod Hughes. You may now place your wreaths. Representatives of veterans organizations. For the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch Number 292, Trafalgar Pro Patria, Bill Wilson, President. For the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch Number 292, Ladies Auxiliary, Carol Hardy, Secretary and past President. For the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch Number 7, Britannia, Keith Yao, President. For the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 127, Public Service, Mel Smith, past President. For the Royal Canadian Legion, BC Yukon Command, Commander Rod Hughes. For the Army, Navy, and Air Force Association, Unit 12, Angela Ray. For the Korea Veterans Association of Canada, Unit 27, Ted 80. For the Métis Veterans of British Columbia, Barbara Hulme, Métis Veterans of BC Women's Representative, and Patrick Harriott, Métis Nation BC Region 1 Director. For the Last Post Fund, Major General Ed Fitch. For the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Commander John Gifford. For Home Children Canada, Darlene Van Ray, daughter of Albert Middleton. Over 100,000 British children were sent to Canada during wartime. Of those, 25,000 then went on to serve. This wreath is placed in honor of Albert Middleton, oldest surviving home child in Canada and Canada's oldest surviving World War II veteran. At the age of 109 years, Albert is also the oldest living man in Canada. You may now place your wreaths. Representatives of peace officers. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Chief Superintendent Shauna Bear, Island District Commanding Officer. For the Victoria Police Department, Deputy Chief Jason Laidman, escorted by Detective Sergeant Justin Monroe. For the Canada Border Services Agency, Honor Guards Tanya Smith and Mara Colusi. For the Canadian Coast Guard, Paul Barrett, Acting Director, Operations. You may now place your wreaths. representatives of community and support organizations. For the Victoria Fire Department, Fire Chief Daniel Atkinson. For the International Association of Firefighters, Local 730, Graham Humber, Vice President. For the Canadian Red Cross, Pat Cleely, Vice President. For the Salvation Army, Lieutenant Tony De Silva, Lead Officer, High Point Community Church, accompanied by Patricia Mamick, Public and Government Affairs Director, BC Division. For the BC Emergency Health Services, Brad Mitchell, South Island Director, accompanied by Bruce Honeyman. For the Commissionaires of Victoria, the Islands and Yukon, Al Giesbrecht and Colin Smith. For the BC Coastal Pilots, Captain Roger Williams. For the St. John Ambulance, Michael Dussault. For the Nautical Institute of British Columbia, Captain Victor Gronmeyer. For the True Patriot Love Foundation, Erica Moore. For the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority, Robert Lewis Manning, CEO. For the Royal United Services Institute, Major Scott Usborne. You may now place your wreaths. For benevolent organizations. For the Knights of Columbus 1256, Grand Knight Joseph Cavan and Deputy Grand Knight Richard Grosset. For the John Howard Society, Manj Tour, Executive Director, and Master Warrant Officer Bill Chisholm. For the United Empire Loyalists, Ruth Rogers and Mike Woodcock. For the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Shasha Mushkarini, President, Victoria Branch. You may now place your wreaths. Representatives for the Youth of Canada. For War Amps Operation Legacy, Sophie Wood and Ethan Van Tol. For the Army Cadet League of Canada, BC Branch, Master Warrant Officer Karmanderjeet Singh, Outstanding Army Cadet and BC Branch Director, Mr. Leslie Triplett. For the 89 Pacific Royal Canadian Air Cadet Squadron, Captain Ryan Fairchild and Sergeant Madden Harper. For the 2nd Camas Scout Group, Avery Crawshaw and Chloe Vaughn. You may now place your wreaths. This concludes the formal laying of wreaths. We would kindly ask that family and friends who wish to lay a wreath for a loved one, please do so following the conclusion of the formal service. Members of the public may also come forward and place their poppies at that time. We are about to complete the formal part of our ceremony. Following the singing of God Save the King, there will be a general salute, after which Commodore David E. Mazur will proceed to the reviewing dais, escorted by Mr. Bob Russell, Executive Member of the Poppy Fund. The parade contingents will then move off for the march past. Please stand and join in the singing of God Save the King, led today by Petty Officer 2nd Class Cindy Hotchuk, vocalist for the Naden Band.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King. Send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King.
This concludes our service here at the Cenotaph today. Thank you everyone for attending to remember and honor those who have lived and died in the service of humankind. As you leave here today, you will pass by veterans and serving members in uniform. Please pause to thank them for their service and to remember their sacrifice. Thank you so much for coming.
A beautiful ceremony coming to a close at the Cenotaph in Victoria. We saw the laying of the wreaths. Now you're seeing members of the public starting to lay their poppies right by those wreaths, which always I find is such a beautiful moment as we welcome back retired Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Johnson, retired Lieutenant Colonel Adele Donaldson. Adele, what jumped out to you in that ceremony today?
The one thing that really hit home is just the number of people that have come out, the variety of people within the crowd as well. It's always a very emotional day, and I'm so pleased to see so many people that have shown out to pay their respects.
Yeah, it was beautiful. There was that one shot in particular that stuck with me. It was a young mother holding her child, and that's going to stick with that child forever. And eventually she'll be going to the ceremony and hopefully taking her children as well. I think that that's sort of the importance of what we're doing. Lawrence, what jumped out to you?
Well, the thing, when you really look at it, someone could say, well, it's the same old, every year it's the same thing. But that's important. One wit used to say, tradition is something that you did once and decided you liked it so much you did it again. But it's important for those that attend that they know the ritual, they can participate in any which way that they wish, and we know we're very satisfied at seeing it well done, as it was again this year. What a wonderful remembrance.
Yeah, wonderful indeed. And Adele, like you, the crowds really blew me away. I know last year it was raining, and so the crowds were pretty strong despite that rain. But this year, it was standing room only, shoulder to shoulder, rows of people, and I think that is so important. And we were sent some video actually from Brentwood Bay, where they're holding a ceremony there as well. So many people just paying their respects on that day. And as we just saw those cadets walk out, I think it's a good time to maybe ask about the future of just Canada and what Canada's role is moving forward.
Well, the one thing that's very clear to me, Paul, is that we live in a globally integrated world.
Right.
And it's got a very uncertain and unsettled future. So as I look forward, I just see how important, as we're looking at the conflicts that are going on, how important our defense and our military is to be able to rise to the challenges that are occurring. Canada will not be unaffected by what's going on in the world. And I think we are all very aware of that. We've been very affected by the fact that a number of our friends and families are actually in these conflict zones. So I think it's really brought it home that the future is something that we need to look at and ensure that we're prepared to meet what we're looking at potentially in the world today.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I mean, there's obviously things happening overseas right now that are affecting a lot of Canadians. And Lawrence, I'll ask the same question to you with Canada's role. I mean, Canada's played such a pivotal role in so many wars, but also in peacekeeping missions. What do you see as Canada's role moving forward?
Well, we're not here today to discuss defense policy. We're here to remember.
Yeah.
And when I heard Padre Gates, part of his prayer, what came across to me is that Canada's always been a can-do environment. Canadians are can-do people. And while we would appear to be a little unprepared right now, when you look back at our history, we went into the Second World War in September of 1939, and in August, the Liberal War Cabinet or Federal Cabinet met, and they said Canada's contribution to this oncoming conflict is going to be 1 infantry division. And when you look at the end of the war, we had the 3rd largest Navy, we had a Canadian Army, 2 Corps Canadian Army participating in the battlefield, we had the Commonwealth Air Training. Canada's a can-do nation. So when I look to the future, I'm sure that we'll be a can-do again, contributing with our allies to whatever the threat is for Canada.
Yeah, can do indeed. And you're right, I don't want to get too much into it, but I know that you've spent time with NATO, Adele, and so, I mean, making sure that NATO funding, that was a big idea for the Canadian government, and it's something that they're still striving for, but there's still a long way to go in that regard, right?
There is, and I'm encouraged and cautiously optimistic to see that that more and more attention will be put on our support and to the troops, that ability to modernize, to reconstitute, to be ready to meet the challenges that are out there.
Yeah, well, Canada has certainly met the challenge over the year. One thing that stuck out to me is you both mentioned family. And I mean, there's, of course, the service family members, but your immediate family is so affected by everything. And it's a powerful day for them as well. So, Lawrence, maybe I'll give you some final thoughts on just what you're thinking about, who you're thinking about on this day as we wrap up our Remembrance Day ceremony.
Well, I'm thinking about all those serving in the Canadian Scottish Regiment today. And you saw, of course, the commanding officer was down at the main cenotaph. But all these different observances, whether it's in Nanaimo or out on the peninsula or Esquimalt, there's Canadian people from the Canadian Scottish Regiment participating also in those Armistice Day or Remembrance Day ceremonies.
Yeah, you can see the Glengarrys, right?
Yeah,
you can see the Glengarrys. Look for those.
Indeed.
And Adele, just your final thoughts on today.
Well, I think of the importance of the young people recognizing today. And we've enjoyed this very long period of peace, and our youth need to know how that peace came about. To the youth of today, and obviously the people that will be the leaders of tomorrow, I remind them of the last stanza of Canadian John McCrae's poem in Flanders Fields, where he says, "To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields."
Yeah, it is so powerful. I think written back in 1915, but the world still very much resonate today. Well, Adele, Lawrence, thank you both, one for your service, but spending today with us, it really means a lot.
It was a pleasure for me, and I'm sure for Adele.
Indeed.
All right, we'll be asking you back again next year, right? No, thank you both.
Okay.
And from all of us here at CHEK, thank you for joining us for today's special Remembrance Day coverage. It truly is such an honor for us to bring this to you. And to those who have served and continue to serve, thank you. We are going to end the show, as Adele just alluded to, with Flanders Fields, that beautiful poem from John McCrae. This version is read by Canadian journalist and broadcaster Michael Enright. Michael is joined by Goodness and Simone from George J. Elementary School, lest we forget.
In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow
between the crosses, row on row,
that mark our place. And in the sky, the
larks still bravely singing
fly,
scarce heard amid the guns
below. We are the dead.
Short days ago we
lived,
felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie
in Flanders Fields.
Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch.
Be
yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep.
Though
poppies grow
in Flanders Fields.